RotoGrinders, welcome back. NFL Pick 6 show, week number 4. Dean Shavelson, Rich Hribar, sharp football analysis, from the worksheet as well. It's John Daigle from 4 for 4. We're doing it. It's Wednesday night. We're live. You know what's going on. You know what's happening. You got to get here live. Why do you got to get here live? You got to join the Listener League. And why do you have to join the Listener League? Because if you finish first in that, you get yourself, well, last week we did it. We ran it out there. And shout out to Cookie Monster Rules. Cookie Monster Rules. Yes. Jump in the comment section. Great name. Fabulous name. Jump in the comment section. Let us know. We'll get yourself, we're going to get you not 1 week, but a month of RotoGrinders Premium. Boss Man said, let's pump it up to a month going forward, a month retroactive. So we're going to drop that link in chat as well. We're also going to drop it in the pinned comments on YouTube up to 100. We're going to 100. So, and if you're on the show, it doesn't matter. You can't win. So you have a 1 in 95 chance. It's $5 to play as is. It's a standard contest on DK. First 10 get paid out. And as an additional perk, you get a month free of RG Premium. By the way, not just NFL, but all the sports, every single sport you can think of, with the exception of NASCAR. NASCAR happens to be a la carte, but even LOL and CSGO, which Rich, I'm sure you're are you in the LOL streets or the CSGO? Do you know what that is?
I do, but I'm not in them streets. No, we need to. We need to get like Marvel Snap on there or something. Then I can start playing that. But no, and I'm not in the LOL streets.
You're a Marvel Snap sharp. I don't know what Marvel Snap is, but that sounds like fun. I just got a PS5, and maybe I'll partake. I don't know if that's what I need for it, but you got my interest.
Spider-Man's coming out in a couple weeks, Dean.
Yeah, did I mess up not getting the Spider-Man console? I could have spent $100.
Oh, yeah, good furniture. Yeah, you definitely messed up.
Bad job by me, I suppose. I chose poorly.
I almost bought a new one. I have PS5, but I almost bought a new one just to have it.
Well, there you go. I guess I should have asked you, I suppose. It's John Daigle of 4 for 4 Sports. Daigle, welcome to week 4. How are things in your world?
Everything's going well. The show still freshens me up in the middle of the week since Rich and I pretty much try to turn everything around by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And fresh off of a week that kicked me in the head, Dean, we were talking behind the scenes about it being so obvious, and so obvious weeks as I continue to tinker my own game and try to just keep up to date and continue learning more every single week. So obvious weeks are where I tend to overthink it, or at least zig when everyone's going the same direction, which last week is an example of that not being the right move. I wish I had known Justin Herbert was coming in at 7%. That would have changed my entire tune on that game, the Vikings and the Chargers. But we learn and we move on.
Yeah, I felt like I should have been more profitable last week, and I just basically broke even. It was a rough week for your boy as well. And I think on this very show, I was being hyperbolic. I was being bold. I believe I said, hey, the Dolphins are going to win by 30. I talked about their illegal home field advantage. And I was wrong by 10 the wrong way. I was wrong by 10 the other way. They won by 50. Just completely outrageous. The Dolphins are so fun. The most fun team in the NFL. That's obviously one of the games we're going to talk about. This is your first time here in the Pick 6 show. What we do, we focus on the 3 main games on the main slate. We're not talking about Thursday or the Toy Story game that's going on with Atlanta and Jacksonville, or nonsense that's going on there on Disney Plus. I'm going to check it out. I'm curious.
Yeah, there's London games. There's London games this week. RIP my West Coasters. Pour one out for you guys.
Yeah, if it's a Calvin Ridley revenge game, I'm sure the people are excited about that for sure.
This is a big revenge game week in general.
Jameis Winston.
You can make a whole lineup of. You can make a whole revenge game lineup. I think it's like Thielen's going against the Vikings. We can get him in. Brandon
Cooks, Ezekiel Elliott. Jameis Winston. It's not a good lineup, but you can make a lineup for sure. It's definitely something you can do. It's not necessarily advisable. We focus on the main slate, the 12 main games, and we're going to talk about Buffalo and Miami in a second. Rich, do you have any main takeaways from week 3? I know we mostly looked forward.
No, it was good. It's the same way as you. I mean, it was obviously a super high-scoring week. Anytime the chalk game hits, it's going to be a real high-scoring week for a lot of people. Definitely got cute in a few spots. I got on Calvin Ridley real late on Saturday night too, with when Derek Stingley was going to be out. I started jamming, Calvin Ridley in some spots, and that obviously didn't go well. He dropped a touchdown, but we live and learn. We survive. We endure and survive, baby. We move on.
All right, let's do it. Let's just jump right in and talk about the main game, the first main game on the slate. I'll throw it to you, Daigle. Daigle has the honor of picking these games. I got it. When we get to game 3, I did a little double take. I'm like, this is what we're talking about in game 3, but it is it's interesting. I don't know if it's going to be fun to watch, but certainly interesting. The third game, there's a little tease for the people, but the very first one, this should be a blast. Miami, the undefeated Dolphins, head up to Buffalo. 53.5 is the total. Miami 3-point dogs, biggest total on the board by 5 points here. Daigle, where do we want to start? We want to just talk about how incredible this Dolphins offense happens to be. Waddle, I believe, is he out of the concussion protocol? I think he is. I assume that means we should expect him to play going forward, week 4. But well, feel free to start where you want. But I just want to hear how spectacular the Dolphins are.
They are good. It was also just a wacky game because the Broncos were so bad. Cortland Sutton, his 2 fumbles even. I've never seen someone run with the ball that unprotected in such a long time. Like, he was like trying to turn that ball over. Less than 30 seconds remaining in the half, and that dude turns it over inside the Broncos 20. Just let Miami score yet again with those last 27 seconds. It was wild across the board. And even then, they still won't play Marvin Mims. It's absolutely incredible. But let's start with the Dolphins because they deserve to be started with. And I think for me, I come into the slate saying I have enough questions about Buffalo's defense to still have complete confidence in Miami's offense. However, you want to stack them. Wherever you're trying to soak up their touchdowns between which positions, and even if you're trying to stack them with Tua. Buffalo has now created the 4th highest pressure rate and are tied with the Cowboys for the league lead in sack rate. But the 3 quarterbacks they've faced so far, Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Sam Howell, all rank 1st, 11th, and 13th, above average rates and holding onto the ball before release this year. Whereas Tua is not only leading the league with the quickest time from snap to throw, he's one of only 6 quarterbacks averaging 9 air yards per target. So he's getting rid of it quickly, and it's going downfield because of Mike McDaniel's scheme. So just given who the Bills have played so far, I think it's enough to question if they are capable of pressuring Tua and an offense that's literally revolutionizing football. The biggest change since basically Patrick Mahomes revolutionized the game single-handedly in this time. So I still like the Dolphins no matter how we want to swing it.
The Dolphins killing it with speed. Mostert, Devin Achane. It's Achane now. You score 4 touchdowns. You drop the Al Bundy game. You get Adam Schefter to go out there and tell the people, it's just so you know, going forward, it's Achane. Double Al Bundy game for this Miami backfield, which is outrageous, like unheard of. 4 touchdowns.
Miami's names and rosters in general, we got to do something about this because Devon lost his apostrophe somewhere along the way from Texas A&M to Miami. Robbie Anderson has like 7 different names, and no one can tell you what it is now. They were calling him Robbie Chosen. Last I checked, I thought it was legally Chosen Anderson, but I could be wrong. I do not know where to go with any of these guys now.
Yeah, wasn't Robbie Chosen the guy that said we should have got to 100? Wasn't he the one talking about that?
He should just be chosen, just chosen. Period. Like Prince, like just be chosen.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
100 was how many yards of separation he had over Patrick Surtain. Good grief, he just ran right by him.
Somebody was trying to tell me that Surtain being on Hill, like Hill had a terrible matchup. I couldn't believe somebody was telling me that on Twitter. Like, how could you play Hill? It's like, well, he's going to get 90% of the targets for starters. Like,
what is this, 2010? We're talking about the quarterback wide receiver matchup still?
I abandoned that conversation pretty quickly. I'm like, all right, man, if you keep telling yourself this was a bad matchup for Hill and you did it the right way.
The pick 6 will consistently fight against wide receiver quarterback matchups, running back snap rates, since touches matter more, and red zone. Well, 2 out of 3 of us will fight against red zone. One of us still likes it.
It's a democracy, so I guess I'm outvoted on red zone, I suppose. But I can't believe you guys know you're in the.
Well, listen, America's wrong about a lot of things.
We only have it's already an hour and a half podcast, Rich. We do not have time to delve into that world. So Buffalo defense was spectacular last week. They're supposed to be pretty good. Washington, man, a lot of sacks taken there, but this Miami offense is also just incredible. Rich, are we just assuming that like they're going to find a way to get the Buffalo? This is going to be a shootout. They're going to, keep up their end, put up 25 points, give or take.
We hope that's what we want, right? Because I mean, these teams played, last year around this time. It was in Miami. It wasn't like that great of a game. It was low scoring. We talked about it last week a little bit. It was like one of those early season Miami games where like Buffalo ran like 70 plays. Then they played again. I think it was after Christmas or right before Christmas. Maybe it was after Thanksgiving. And they played a really good game. It was a night game. That's all I remember. And that was it. But if you look at Tua's 2 games against the Bills last year, he was still second in quarterback rating against the Bills last year. They found a way to move the football in those games. So I do think they're going to move it here. Honestly, Bill Belichick and the Patriots only allowing 24 points to this Miami team in week 2. Like, maybe that's proof Bill still has it. Like, right? I don't know, man. Like, it's going to be crazy when you look at the sample we have early in the season. Like, the Patriots actually kind of slowed them down a little bit. It seems like no one could. So we'll see what happens here. But I mean, you're just into it because they're the Madden roster, man. We've been talking about it for 2 years. This is how every person built their team in Madden. You sorted by one attribute. I'm gonna get the fastest humans. I'm gonna give them the football, and that's what Mike McDaniel's offense philosophy is. I mean, they're running plays. They're running plays where Tyreek Hill is coming in motion. You've got, Achane, running like an orbit look. They're giving it to Raheem Mostert. Like what the hell is going on, man? Like all these humans are running 25 miles an hour. It's just absolutely wild. You see that picture of all the Broncos just like on the ground. They were just in hell the entire game. It was crazy. And then on the other side, I mean, we've got the Bills. Like quietly, the Bills are out the gates really strong too as well. I mean, they're second in the league in points per drive behind Miami. It's just that Miami just hung a 70 burger on a team and they're getting all this pub. But I mean, there was some talk of like, are the Bills like taking a step back offensively after week 1? And they've come back and dropped 2 dynamite games too. So hopefully we get a lot of fireworks in this one. Obviously everyone is relatively expensive. The Dolphins are kind of a hard team to stack. And now with the running backs kind of getting a boost here, because you talked about last week that Mostert was one of the better plays on the slate, and he was wildly popular. And for him, it's like when the chalk running back drops 4 touchdowns, like it's about to be wild. So but I think looking at this, you're looking at like the ancillary guys, right? Like who are the ancillary guys that can pop in this game, because everyone is pretty expensive.
So I'll tell you, I'm not playing. I should have known about Durham Smythe. So I went on Player Profiler, and that's not the end all be all. But did you guys happen to check this by chance? Player Profiler, his comp, no. Durham Smythe, former Dolphin, former Jets. I think he was like a former blocker, basically. I should have known right there. I saw Anthony Fasano, and I'm like, I don't want to roster chalk Anthony Fasano, 2023 version of it. And I had some chalk Durham Smythe, and that did not go well. Is that over? I assume. I mean, obviously that was in part because of Waddle being out, and we're assuming Waddle's back. We're done with Smythe though, or is he still running a ton of routes?
No, he didn't even run the most tight end routes for his own team. They canceled him after 2 weeks, said we're done with this. Also without Jalen Waddle, it was still pretty condensed. That's the issue. Like Braxton Berrios picked up a couple first downs. River Kraft got injured after his first catch, but it was Tyreek Hill 39% of the targets, and then their running backs combined for 39% of the targets. That was it. So it was still a pretty whittled down target tree.
Yeah, listen, Mike McDaniel gives the ball to the good players. Yes. Like it's tried and true.
Are you good? Yes. Are you fast? Yes. You're getting the ball. There you go.
Yeah. Exactly. They were never going to start pumping River Craycraft with targets. Like that wasn't going to happen.
Oh, man, I fell for that one too. And he got hurt, so you never really know. But I was probably dropping dead anyway with Craycraft. So what's interesting is I don't think these guys are going to get owned as far as the running backs. Just because they're going to sort of eat off each other.
Mostert is, right? Like, there's no way.
I don't know about that. As of right now, and again, this is Wednesday night, grain of salt, yada, 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 like 3-4% we're looking at. Achane is what, a 1 percentage point. There's a lot of running backs that are like 1K cheaper. I'm looking at DK for what it's worth. Do you think Mostert?
I just think this game will inherently get there. Like, right, if you're looking at like this early in the week, like ownership, I just think that this game in general will boost a lot of the players' like ownership because people are going to play the shit out of this game.
But the game stack aside, dollar for dollar, do you think they're like good prices when you're shopping around? Is it a good price on Mostert at 6.5? Is it a good price for Achane at 5.7? You're not getting those 4 touchdowns.
Achane's probably chasing a little bit, but I do think a Mostert at 6.5 is fine because he's done it so many different ways for multiple weeks, right? I mean, even before like the touchdowns started coming in buckets, like he had like 5 or 6 catches real early in that game. He's been, he was involved in the pass game. Also, the interesting thing about Buffalo is like they give up splash play runs. Like they're really good against the run, and they did the same thing last year, and they're doing it again this year, where they're one of the top teams in terms of yards before contact allowing the fewest yards before contact, and they give up these huge runs on the edges when their defensive backs, have to make tackles. They already are doing it again this year. And you saw like Brian Robinson had a long run last year. He just got scripted out of the game, but he had another long run. They're 31st in rate of runs allowed to go for 10 or more yards, the Bills. So when they give up runs, they're big runs. And that's what kind of this run game is built on.
That was basically what Breece Hall did, 109 yards on his first 2 carries. Don't look at what Breece Hall's done after that, but everyone is basically, yes, exploded against them.
John, clean up the Dolphins, head over to the Bills.
That's pretty much it. Well, we've wrapped up already. You can kind of pick your poison here since we know where the ball's going to go. I did think it was interesting that it was a timeshare in the first half before it was a blowout, even though it kind of all was a blowout against the Broncos. But yeah, Achane actually outcarried Mostert 10-7 in the first half. And then because, like Rich said, Mostert had 6 catches in the first half, he out-touched Achane 13-11. But that's practically a timeshare in their backfield.
And where were the beats? Where are the beat reporters on this? Like, that's where, like, that's where some reporting would have been really cool, right? Like, during the week that, like, because we knew Ahmed was going to be out. Like, it wasn't like a surprise that, like, Achane was active and, like, got some touches. But, like, where was the reports? Because he was, like, a focal point. Like, they were running actual scripted plays that were designed around his speed. Like, where was that during the week? Where was someone saying, like, hey, man, like, you know what the Dolphins are about to do Sunday? They're about to involve this kid in the offense. Like, it was out of nowhere.
Because I thought he was a fun prospect, but I was still skeptical of a 180-pound running back in the NFL. But the way they used him, strictly on shotgun, on the outside, scheming him those targets inside the 10-yard line with lots of protection, 3 screens as well. Like, I don't even worry about his size in the NFL now because Mike McDaniel sets him up so well.
So on the fly, I just pulled it up. Devin Achane, who was his best comp according to Player Profile? I was curious. One time, one of the best players in fantasy football for the Tennessee Titans, not Henry.
Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson, yeah.
Yeah. That is an interesting comp. All right, let's jump over to the Bills. What do you have, John, as far as Buffalo? Is it a Gabe Davis week? Is this a week where you can get behind the defense? Is that something you can do? Can you get loose?
Well, it's interesting because Mike McDaniel so far has had all the answers against previous matchups from last year. And this has to be one where he also is thinking, we threw everything at Josh Allen last year and nothing really mattered. In their first game, they blitzed Allen in that humid cramp game that Rich was talking about with 74 dropbacks. So he blitzed him on over 30% of his dropbacks, and he went 9 yards per attempt with 2 touchdowns against the blitz. Then when they played again in week 15, they scaled it back. They only blitzed him on 17% of his dropbacks, and they played man coverage at the highest rate in any team in the league, and he just picked them apart. 13 yards per attempt and 4 touchdowns against man coverage. And so they went back to blitzing his face off in the wild card, and he still averaged 9 yards per attempt with 7 first downs and a touchdown. So I don't know right now, given how well their offense is, given how they performed against the Dolphins last year, if they have an answer either. Even under Vic Fangio this season, they've blended coverages. They haven't blitzed at a top 10 rate in any game just yet. And Allen is still just humming it along. So comfortable with him in this game. And at least we know the targets are still so top heavy, a lot like Miami, still sprinkling in ancillary players like Gabe Davis, for example, has gotten there with a touchdown in his last 2 games, but hasn't reached a 20% target share in any game just yet. He hasn't dominated, whereas that's Stephon Diggs' department. Also, like, you go to their tight ends because we want to play tight ends against this defense. They allowed 5 catches and a touchdown to the Chargers tight ends in week 1. They allowed Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry to combine for 11 catches, 85 yards and a touchdown. We don't count Adam Troutman last week since he's not doing anything anyways. But you would think, like, okay, well, maybe we want to come back here to Dalton Cade or Dawson Knox as one of those fun ancillary pieces. And so just like the Raiders game, I do think it's a good situation where maybe we can try to sneak Gabe Davis and Dawson Knox in if the field is going to go Diggs, Kincaid naturally instead.
I don't have the route participation stuff up in front of me, but I do have Kincaid as far as just like snap count, John. 80% week 1, 60% week 2, 51% week 3. He's going the wrong way.
The way they use him is terrible.
Yes.
He's not used like I have to. It's so weird to watch some of these early draft picks and how they're being utilized. You know, a little bit with Jahmyr Gibbs too in Detroit, but Dalton Kincaid is getting no downfield targets at all. I mean, he's 3.4 air yards per target. Like, this isn't who he was in college. It's really weird because like they brought him in and they're going to run a lot more 12 personnel. He's supposed to be, kind of like a seam stretcher, almost like an extension of like the 1.5, right? It's not supposed to be 12 personnel. It's supposed to be 11.5 personnel. All his targets are like these little bunnies in these pop passes. And it's really weird to see the way he's been utilized so far through 3 games.
Rich, what do you have as far as Buffalo? And of course, I'm going to ask you, you only have one stack to make on the slates. You're going to start with this game, right? Are you starting with Allen or are you starting with Tua?
In the world of the salary cap, Dean, like you always say, I guess Tua. I think Allen is objectively the better play. He's just so expensive always. He's been so good against Miami in his career. He's like literally their thorn. He's 9-2 in 11 starts against the Dolphins. And like Daigle brought up all the stuff from last year. The last time Vic Fangio faced Josh Allen with the Broncos, Josh Allen put up 40 fantasy points against him, 360 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, Vic Fangio's probably thinking about that game still too. Allen, I think is like, because you get the rushing too. He's still like the goal line back. You're still getting all that rushing equity. I mean, he's just more expensive, but I mean, I think probably Waddle's the guy that I think is the most interesting, right? Because, people will get the digs through Allen and people will get through Tyreek just anyways, because he's literally on like one of the most dominant runs at wide receiver, we've seen. He's now run 458 routes with 2 on the field since he's been to the Dolphins. He's averaging 3.74 yards per route run, 44% of team air yards, 35% target share per route run. Just for some context, 2021 Cooper Kupp only averaged 3.12 yards per out run, 30% target rate per out run, 31.8% of the team air yards. Like, if Tua would have never got hurt last year, like, I mean, man, and it's a big what if, but like he would have just an insane season, and he's on this run now where the touchdown regressions come already to start the year, because the one thing that didn't happen last year was he had trouble finding the end zone way below his career rate, and he's already got 4 touchdowns in 3 games. So I think people will get to him, but Waddle has he doesn't have the target volume that Tariq has playing the Tua, but his splits are just like as good. Like, and he's getting so many explosive plays. I mean, even this year, the volume is in there. He's averaging almost 21 yards per catch. So there is upside here too. And if he's going to go maybe a little overlooked, not everyone's going to go really overlooked in this game, but if he comes out to be kind of like the guy that gets kind of skipped over, definitely want to get him this weekend.
Yeah, the only way this game gets overlooked is just the salary reasons. People are obviously going to want it. Rich, you mentioned Vic Fangio. This is my question. Like, how stubborn of a defensive coordinator is he? Like, is he willing to change his ways, or is it his way is his way and that's that? This is our scheme. Come beat it. And Allen's beaten it. He knows he gave up 40 fantasy points. Like, he probably doesn't know that. He probably doesn't know he gave up 40 fantasy points.
He knows it was a lot of stats though, so they probably equaled fantasy points.
My point is, like, is he going to try to change, or is just his strategy is his strategy, and that's basically it? We're going to run what is it, cover 2? He runs.
Hey, he's like a cover 4 guy. Cover 6. He runs a lot of quarters. So that's typically his MO. He's never been a guy that's blitzed a lot. In the Bills, even before, Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, they were not a big blitzing team either. But yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to do what they do, pretty much.
It's not going to work.
It seems very reminiscent of the Chargers-Vikings game last week, where you can kind of pick your poison. You probably got to get a little weird. Dink won the big contest on DK last week with Justin Herbert double stack and Alexander Madison running it back. A couple other, low percentage plays mixed in, but it just seems like kind of that where we need to figure out running it back with a running back or just figuring it out that way.
Your favorite piece in this game, John? And I guess I'll ask the same question. Do you agree? Ideally, obviously, for the salary, it's probably Allen, but we're not really sure how much the salary is going to be squeezed. Certainly, it's tricky to figure out on a Wednesday night as far as what value is going to be out there. But do you have a clear and obvious side, or both look pretty good to start?
I think my 2 pieces to start with are Josh Allen and Raheem Mostert, and then I try to piece it together from there.
Gotcha. All right. Let's move on to game 2. Game 2, I believe this is the second highest total on the board. It is 48.5 total right now. We got Vegas at the Chargers. Chargers, what a 5.5-point favorite. Eckler practiced partially, a partial practice on a Wednesday night. we're definitely going to keep our eyes on that. I guess we're kind of sort of somewhat hoping he plays just so we don't look at Josh Kelly anymore. If he doesn't play, Keenan Allen might break the all-time reception record by week like 3 or 4 or wherever we're at. He's on pace. He's going to do it, boys, if he stays healthy. Obviously, Big Mike Williams is donezo for the year. That's a big bummer. Is that live? I think 149. I was looking at this the other day. 149 is the all-time receptions lead in a season. That was Thomas for New Orleans. Just health, right? If Keenan Allen stays healthy and plays 16, 17 games.
Yeah, because this defense is garbage. Like,
yes.
I guess which is one of the reasons it's a bonanza every week. There, the Chargers are this is like why everyone wanted to circle that game. It was the 2 Carnival teams, right? Like it was going to get there, and the Raiders' defense is just as bad. So we could have it again. We just need Garoppolo to play. I feel weird saying we need Garoppolo to play.
Yeah.
Who is their backup again? Why am I blanking?
Brian Hoyer.
Oh, the former Patriot.
And everyone wants them to start Aiden O'Connell because he was like the preseason hero, but he hasn't been active yet so far this season. It's been Hoyer's been the QB2, but man,
the last 2 starts Brian Hoyer made, he got benched, which tells you exactly what you need to know.
For who?
Yeah, for Stidham was one, right?
Yeah,
yeah, that was a COVID game. Yeah, I remember that against the Chiefs.
Oh man, it's funny because I think we'll talk about it later on in the show, but we kind of sort of want Bryce Young to sit, I think, right, this week, which is a weird thing to say, but it looks like he's going to play.
We want Andy Dalton and Jimmy Garoppolo to play on this slate.
we actually do, yes.
And the year again is 2023. All right, yeah. So John, feel free to start wherever you want to start when it comes to the Chargers and the Raiders, and if you want to do speculation on Eckler, by all means, go for it. But it's Wednesday night. We don't really know.
Again, we do need Garoppolo here. We'll see, because concussion protocol, the way it's kind of gone since last year is that you're basically guaranteed to miss the next game. But if we get some pushback, if we get Garoppolo or Aiden O'Connell for whatever reason, Rich already mentioned it. The Chargers defense has been absolutely atrocious. They're one of only 2 defenses allowing over 130 receiving yards per game from the slot, and one of only 2 defenses allowing 120 receiving yards per game from the boundary. They're just getting beat wherever the hell you want to beat them from. Not only that, but we like in our shootouts to have honed in target trees, and doesn't get more honed in than Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, because in the 2 games they've played together, they've literally soaked up 73% of the Raiders' targets. It just doesn't go anywhere else but those 2, and then you can sprinkle in Josh Jacobs for around 11%, and that's about it. So whether it's Adams or Myers in this game, both seem like intriguing options. I guess we're probably asking, are they just as intriguing from Brian Hoyer? I don't know. Let's see how salary works out.
I mean, Devontae Adams, remember, he had a 30 burger against the 49ers with Stidham last year. I don't think we're writing him off.
He's already bummed, by the way. He said he's tired of losing. He's got no patience, and understandably so. It's got to be frustrating being in this team that's pretty terrible. And I don't know if he's trying to motivate a trade of any sort, or he's just kind of venting after another rough game. Did you guys catch that comment? I don't know if you saw that, Rich, or not. But I mean, what's he going to do? He's going to keep playing, I suppose, and we'll see. I assume he's going to stick on this team for at least for this week. That's all that matters. It's DFS. We care about this week and this week only. But is Michael Mayer just not a thing, or it's just like he's a rookie tight end and it takes time to develop? Because I was told he was a part of this great, incredible rookie class, which some guys have excelled so far. It's early, it's small samples, but as of right now, Mayer is just is it Mayer or Meyer? Not sure. I guess Meyer's
not playing, right? He's not playing, is what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just not even on the field.
No, yeah, I mean, he's not playing a lot. He's basically splitting with Austin Hooper. Not getting on the field is the whole thing. Like, we've got some of these guys that we talk about. Kincaid's been largely on the field. Musgrave is just in the Kyle Pitts role where he can't get a non-target pass from Jordan Love.
Laporta.
And when Laporta is just going ham. But Mayer's not on the field. He's just not playing right now. He's just not getting enough snaps.
You got to see what you have in Austin Hooper in the year 2023, I suppose. Yeah. Is that what's going on here?
They put Mayer on the field for a 2-point conversion, and he converted it. But outside of that, we just basically haven't seen him on the field for the Raiders.
Fair enough. I guess one of the more interesting talking points in this game, Rich, is who's going to step up in the absence of Mike Williams. Josh Palmer was well in front of Quentin Johnston basically since the beginning, right? And last week played out that same way as well. People want Quentin to happen, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen just yet. Maybe at some point he unseats him during the season, but I think we're going to assume that it's going to be Palmer still going forward. You tell me. And then I've heard rumblings possibly of 2 tight end sets. They have Everett and Parham. Parham totally sucked out last week. 2 catches for 2 touchdowns, like 6 yards. And good for him. But he might get a little more work this week. Talk about the Chargers. And I guess obviously we know who Allen is. Allen Spectacular is going to get 20 targets.
Yeah, and for this game too, remember Eckler's been out, and that was literally giving us like that condensed target tree for the first time for the Chargers because Josh Kelly doesn't command targets from the pass game. So if Eckler's still out, then these targets that Big Mike was getting, obviously Keenan Allen just going to he had 20, so he's going to keep getting more, but they have to go somewhere else because it's not like Josh Kelly's going to come out and have 8 targets in this game. Palmer has been kind of the immediate next guy up. Obviously, he's familiar with the team. So far this season, he's run a route on 97% of the team dropbacks with Mike Williams off the field. Going back to last year, that rate was 93%. And then last year with Big Mike off the field and Keenan Allen on the field, which is the scenario we have now, because we obviously know they missed a bunch of time together last year. He's received Palmer, that is 21% of the team targets. He's been targeted on 19% of his routes. Big picture, I do think Quentin Johnston is like the longer play. They drafted him in the first round, let him get acclimated. We'll see down the stretch what happens for this particular week. He's probably not going to still play as many snaps as Josh Palmer. Doesn't mean he can't hit where he is. The Raiders are just as bad of a defense as the Chargers have been, especially through the air. So there's opportunity here for him to still kind of hit while people look at that 4K Josh Palmer and, their eyes get all glowing. If we just get a big play, he's a great tackle breaker. Funny is, he actually, a lot of people were talking about he was going to be like the A-dot lifter for Justin Herbert, but that's not what he was at TCU. He wasn't really a downfield threat. He was more of a really, a guy that was running a lot of drags, getting the football in his hands and breaking a lot of tackles. He's a huge dude and was really good with the football. Let's see if the Chargers can incorporate him that way too. So Eckler being out is kind of the first key. And then, like you said, do they start to then mix in maybe a Gerald Everett as an extended slot with Parham? Parham's just been their goal line back since, basically the start of the season. He's got, he leads all tight ends in targets in the end zone so far. Four have come in the red zone of his 7 targets, a team high 3 in the actual end zone. He also drew a penalty on another one back in week 1 that Eckler then punched in the next play. But yeah, I think it's going to start. Obviously, you look to get Keenan Allen in. And this is not just a Keenan Allen start of the season. This goes back to last year. His past 9 games played, he's been a wide receiver 1 scorer in 6 of his past 9 games. He's outright led the position in scoring 3 of those 9 weeks. This isn't just a start of this year thing. And then the Raiders are getting absolutely murked by opposing wide receivers. 31st in catch rate allowed to wide receivers, 24th in yards per target. They're allowing the league high touchdown rate to the position. So there's opportunity here, especially if Eckler's out for kind of a lot of the pieces here.
Keenan Allen is actually averaging more fantasy points per game than Tyreek Hill. Think about that for a second. That's how good he's been.
He threw a touchdown. Yeah, the touchdown pass last week too with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the A-dot lifter. I know that was a big point that they were talking about last year as far as Herbert, for whatever reason, his A-dot was not that far. He's got this ridiculous arm and it doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really check out.
Because it's not a quarterback stat. Depth of target's not a quarterback stat. It's the players earn targets. And okay. when your top 2 targets are a running back and a slot wide receiver, your A-dot's not going to be high. In week 1, his A-dot wasn't good because Austin Eckler played. And Keenan, and Eckler's been out the last 2 weeks. It's gone up because other guys get the football. When you don't have to throw your running back, 15% of the targets, guess what your A-dot looks like? It starts to climb.
That was a lot like going back to the offseason, people saying they wanted to draft Gerald Everett, when the argument is 1, we know Keenan Allen and Mike Williams weren't healthy last year, but 2, how does Gerald Everett earn targets whenever Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler are healthy, and Quentin Johnston? It's just kind of arguing yourself into a circle.
How much of a hit does Allen take if Eckler plays? All of a sudden, Eckler's going to get 6, 7, 8, 9 targets, whatever it is, and Kelly would get 2 or 3 or something.
Listen, Allen's going to have a robust target share. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you can say he goes from low 30s to high 20s, but it's the other guys, right? It is the Everetts, it's the Palmers, the Quentin Johnstons that then get squeezed.
John, you have a favorite dart amongst, all things considered, Everett, Parham, Palmer, Johnston, and I guess probably better to answer, assuming Eckler is not playing because there's a little more upside there.
And the Chargers bye week is next week. He mentioned that that's not on his mind, but the fact he mentioned it probably tells us it's on his mind. So I'm assuming he's out. And if so, it's ugly. I understand that. But I think it's kind of like a play like Jerome Ford last week in a bad matchup. You just take a chance on touches. I don't mind going back to Josh Kelly. Not saying I'll be overweight on him, even though everyone is going to give that reaction and already be disgusted. But at least we could say, okay, well, this dude just had 86% of their backfield touches. I understand it was only 12 touches. I get it. But the Raiders also, just like the Chargers, as much as they're getting beat through the air, maybe you don't have to run against them. Maybe they continue not running at all since they're having so much success, the Chargers through the air as well. But the Raiders are still allowing the 9th highest explosive run play rate, runs of 10+ yards. So I don't know. For tournaments at his price, I don't mind going back to Kelly.
Rich, I think of that quote, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. Well, ain't never going to fool me again, or I can't remember how it was butchered. But, man, this is like the third time now for Kelly. I know one game was Tennessee and whatever. Tennessee's a brick wall, whatever. But there's a lot of
6 point home favorite. You just play the blind spot. I mean, that's the only argument I can make for Josh Kelly is literally it'd be a blind spot play because anytime you have the second highest game total on the slate and you've got a home favorite of almost the 6 points is right now, you would just blind play that spot. We were in the same bucket with Rachaad White kind of in week 2, right? Like no one thinks Rachaad White's good, but he was, a 5.5 point home favorite against the Bears. And you just say like, whatever, I'm going to play the spot.
Just don't look that Josh Kelly has turned his last 25 touches into 56 yards.
Yeah. I'm not going to make any
that part.
I'm not going to make any pro Josh Kelly, the player argument.
I'm
just
Rich,
saying from a theoretical game theory stance, that would be a spot that like just objectively would be conducive for running back production.
But what if he also comes with ownership is kind of my question, and who knows where it's going to settle. But that's kind of my issue. Like if everybody says no, that stinks, I'm going to run away. Right. Then okay, maybe. But if people are,
that's what I'm assuming.
On this slate in particular, I don't know though, because he's the same price as Jerome Ford. He's the same price as Javonte Williams, who is already tracking to be really popular this week. He's the same price as Najee Harris, who's in a good spot as well. And everyone hates, but people might get there to him on him this week as well. There's a lot of company he keeps at his price. It's not like he's the only guy like standing out in his price zone.
Miles Sanders at 5'8", I think is going to get some ownership too, because it's Minnesota. You mentioned the Carnival of Minnesota. And people don't like Miles Sanders, but I think they'd like to pick on Minnesota more. They don't like Miles Sanders, I think. But all right. And who was your favorite, Rich, your favorite dart amongst the options there outside of Keenan Allen? Can feel free to bring the tight ends in as well. Everett, Parham. Like Parham's 2.8. Like, what do you really need out of your tight end at 2.8? I'm not saying to chase the 2 touchdowns, obviously, but if he gets 3 catches, for 15 yards and a touchdown, I think you're okay with that. Amongst Palmer, Johnston, Everett, Parham, your favorite amongst that group, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to play Keenan Allen, and then I guess if we get cute, maybe go Johnston if, everyone's going to flock to the 4K Josh Palmer. But, I mean, obviously, objectively, Josh Palmer is going to run a lot more routes than Johnston will.
All right, game 3. Shout out to Notum in the chat. Notum in the chat says, because I teased it before, I'm like, game 3, I can't believe this is the game we're going to be talking about. He says, it's going to be the Bears. It is the Bears. Denver at the Bears. 46 total. How bad do you have to be, honestly? You're facing a team that just got walloped. It just got a 70 dropped on them. You're at home and you're still 3.5 point dogs. It opened at 2.5, and the bettors said, please let me bet on the team that just got absolutely walloped by 70 points. I'm begging to bet on Denver. Let's raise that line to 3.5. John, you're still in Chicago? You're in Chicago now? Yes,
I am, and it's a complete meltdown between the Bears having no coaching. You can't call it the worst coaching job ever, because we are, in the past few years, we've seen Urban Meyer, Joe Judge, and Nathaniel Hackett. But it is on par with that grouping. It's atrocious. Not to mention Last night, Dean, I don't watch baseball, but even like watching the news as an old soul, you couldn't help but run away from that Cubs play in the outfield to the Braves last night. It was just on repeat on every single show in Chicago.
Well, I'm really curious to hear. I went to you first because I know you're a Chicago guy. You're probably hearing all local talk radio. I'm sure if you're into such thing is really roasting the Bears these days, rightfully so.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear your angle in this game because I genuinely don't know. Like, anything goes. I would not be shocked by like if this game was 33-32, if it was 13-10. Like, nothing would surprise me in this game, and I'm curious what angle you're working.
That both defenses can't stop the opposing offenses. For the Broncos, at least, it hasn't been the offense's problem. They're at least, although Rich even discussed last week about them being a team that may regress given their scoring rates, at least they're still putting up the ball. Russell Wilson has still been over 300 yards in back-to-back games, even though it's been garbage time essentially to get there, and plus a Hail Mary in week 2. But they're still doing their part. It's the fact that the Bears now, Justin Fields has 24 carries on the year, and even with that, he hasn't finished any higher than a QB 12 in any game. That's how atrocious that offense and that's coaching has been. But we at least think it's a spot where maybe they can have success here since everyone has success against the Broncos. Garoppolo, Sam Howell, and Tua completed 75% of their passes collectively against Denver. That's how bad this pass defense has been. Not that you're even trying to stack Justin Fields, even though we are fresh off 11 carries for him. There was no rhyme or reason to those 11 carries. It just seems like they were just throwing shit at the wall, hoping it sticks. It wasn't like they were actually designing runs for him. But still, it's a high total. And given the overall big picture of the slate, I think that's what we kind of compare it to and why we talk about this game, because for the Rams and Colts, there are skinny stacks opportunities everywhere, but do we want to get to their quarterbacks? We're still waiting on Anthony Richardson and concussion protocol. And then, as we mentioned, we may not get Andy Dalton. If it's Bryce Young, that's a totally different game as well. So this is just one that stands out, given that we at least know the players in the game.
Rich, what do you gravitate to here? Denver, Chicago. I think I'll tell you right now, Javonte Williams is really popping in models. He's 5.5 on DK. Cortland Sutton seems like a pretty good price at 5.3. He was really, really close to having a big game last week, despite them getting absolutely shellacked versus Miami. But what's the first thing that pops for you, Denver, Chicago?
Yeah, I mean the Bears. It's funny because the Bears offense versus the Broncos defense is the optimal like stoppable force versus movable object matchup. What wins out? Because, I mean, the thing with Fields, and I was down on Fields heading into the season for fantasy because there was just no way he was going to have this explosive run rate that he had, right? Like, he had the most rushing yards in NFL history for a quarterback on runs of 20 or more yards in a season last year. He had more yards on 20-plus yard runs than Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts put together last year. And, like, that just wasn't sustainable because as a passer, he's doing the same shit he did last year. You're just not getting all those long touchdown runs. So he hasn't made that jump. And that's why the fantasy scores haven't followed, though, because you're not getting all those long touchdown runs from him. But so like, it's really hard to have faith and go back to him, right? Like you could definitely make the argument for Denver. Maybe he ends up popping, but I'm more interested in the Russell Wilson side of this for sure, where he's priced. So Wilson had his worst outing last week. But here's the thing. It would have been his 5th highest score last year. So like there is a lot better floor than we're getting, from Russell Wilson this year. He's just got to put a whole game together. It's been like literally a tale of two halves for him the entire season. In the first half of games this year, he leads the NFL in passer rating. He's completed 77% of his first half passes, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. It happened again on Sunday in the first half, 16 of 24, 193 yards and a touchdown. And then in the second half, 7 of 14, it was an interception. But in the second half, he's 32nd in now 3 games. It's consistent all 3 weeks. He had the Hail Mary kind of bail him out in week 2. But 55% completion rate, 6 yards per pass attempt, the 1 touchdown pass, that was the Hail Mary. So he just needs to put a whole game together. But when you look at the Bears, this is not just, again, another small sample. This goes all the way back into Matt Eberflus's tenure. The Bears have now lost 13 games in a row. Over those 13 games, they have allowed 25 or more points in every single one of those games. It is tied for the longest streak in NFL history, which happens to be owned by the 1963-1964 Denver Broncos. So the Broncos have a chance to get themselves out of the record books here with 25 or more points against this Bears team. Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield had over 9 yards per pass attempt against this Bears team. Obviously, they faced Patrick Mahomes last week. So, like, it's funny, though, is Patrick Mahomes had actually the fewest yards per pass attempt against the Bears out of those 3 guys. They have 1 sack through 3 games. Like, Russell Wilson, I think, is the move, especially if everyone's going to go to Javonte Williams, too, right? Like, you're getting instant kind of leverage, too, as well. So, man, can't believe we're going to do a Broncos country like live.
Yeah. Is Javonte separating himself enough from Samaje P. Ryan at this point, or it's kind of a timeshare still, right? Like, it's sort of built in, right? It's built into the price, but is he getting enough, basically, what I'm asking Rich, is to justify him being super popular?
He had 7 of 11 backfield touches in the first half last week before, it all just fell to garbage. But we haven't seen it yet. He's been slowly working his way into distancing himself to making P. Ryan at least a passing down back. But man, I still can't shake out a couple weeks ago when they just threw Jaleel McLaughlin for a random carry at the 5. I just have a hard time what's to stop Sean Payton from doing some weird stuff, man? Because after you give up 70 points, all hands are on deck, right? Anything could happen for the Broncos this game.
And we're still seeing him, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, who had 390 plus touches last year. We're still seeing them shake off the rust. That's the thing. It's Javonte Williams hasn't been explosive either. He got there in the first half last week, or in the second half last week. He had a carry over 10 yards, but he's still averaging just less than 4 yards per carry. He's averaging 4 yards per touch. He's turned 12 targets this year into 42 receiving yards. Although he's getting the touches when they're competitive, and they haven't been competitive much, the thing is, he's just not been explosive either. And so you have to go back to the Achilles tear last year.
Oh, man, I'm just looking at the pieces in this game. Sutton seems like the most obvious one. You could play Judy, sure.
But even Sutton, because Sutton had the Rorschach game last week. He actually had season highs last week. 11 targets, 8 catches, 91 yards. But then he has 2 of the worst plays that directly lead to Miami touchdowns. And you have this other guy in Marvin Mims who clearly needs to get more snaps. The Broncos are 0-3, right? When do these who's getting traded on this team, right? So it's Sutton even safe? Is moving forward? Does he lose playing time after what happened Sunday? It's tough when you give up 70 points and nobody's safe, right? Nobody's safe.
They're going to bench Sutton. I understand what you're saying. He was terrible. You think they're just going to bench him? And
no, but I'm just saying.
Trayvon Smith to fix all this, right?
I'm not saying they're going to bench him. I'm saying clearly Marvin Mims has to get more snaps, right? He leads the team in receiving yards, and he's run 27 routes. Yeah, he's run 20. He leads the team in receiving yardage. And he's got a 100-yard kickoff return. He has to play. He needs to get more snaps.
That's why in this spot, I genuinely don't mind just speculative rostering him with Russell Wilson and seeing then what kind of offensive stacks I can build with Bills and Dolphins combined into it. It wasn't just Cortland Sutton either. The Broncos scored 2 touchdowns, but Brandon Johnson's holding or pick plays negated those touchdowns too. So these things have to be in the back of Sean Payton's mind. Maybe they aren't, but am I willing to find out for 3,900 Marvin Mims? Maybe so.
Marvin Mims will play the blank most route, or will run the blank most routes. What percent? What number is he gonna? Where is he gonna finish the podium? If he even finishes on the podium, gold, silver, bronze. Or where is he at as far as routes run for Denver this week? Where are we at? I mean, we're assuming rational coaching, right?
We haven't reached 30% yet, so let's get them a little bit over that.
I will say this: we're recording this on a Wednesday. Obviously, it's early, but Jerry Jeudy did not practice today, so keep tabs on that.
Okay, which means a little Jordan Humphrey unleash him.
That's right.
Brandon Johnson. It really is wild. And like you said,
they're 0-3. This regime has no ties to Judy or Sutton, right? Something could happen. I know the NFL never does fun stuff and like guys don't get moved in season. But maybe if there was ever a time, it makes sense for a couple of these guys of the Broncos to get traded.
It's like last week against the Dolphins. I know Russ didn't get us there last week because Tua and Herbert ended all lives. But yes, Russ just needs to be talked about anytime he's under 6K because they're just not moving his salary on either sides.
You know, Russ always has like that, I don't want to say phony, but like that positive attitude, right? You know,
It's
he's just
phony.
very Russ. Whatever it is, right? What is he saying to the team at the end of this game? Like, what I want to know, was he doing stuff in the, on the plane ride home? Like
this one actually wasn't on him, man. Like it's
no. Is this? There's several 0-3 games, right? We have Chicago's 0-3, Denver's 0-3, but I think what's the other 0-3 game I was looking at? Was it Carolina? Is Carolina versus Minnesota, right?
Vikings and Carolina, yeah.
Vikings, Panthers, which we probably would have talked about if we knew Bryce Young wasn't playing.
Absolutely would have.
All right.
We'll still talk about some pieces still, but
yeah, we run it back if this is our first time. Where have you guys been? If this is your first time listening to the podcast, we run it back. Give our favorite plays position by position in just a second. After we knock out the top 3 games, we're also going to talk about our movie bets. If you guys are not aware, if you somehow missed it, producer Steve had assigned us to we watched Space Jam. I watched Space Jam for the very first time in my life, and I probably was the only one on this podcast that had never seen it before. We have thoughts. We'll discuss it later on in the show. I'm also going to delegate out a movie to you guys this week. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in chat. I promised it before. Going to drop the Listener League in chat. We're giving now a month free of RG Premium if you finish first, or just the first amongst everybody that's participating that does not work in the show. It's 100 people, so you're like 1 in 95 shot to get yourself 1 month free of RG Premium, and it's like a regular contest, just $5 to jump in that contest on DK. Let me go ahead and drop it in chat. I assume it's going to sell out quicker this week. Okay, John, anything else? Final thought as far as Denver, Chicago? I want to throw up talking about this game. It's so bad, but in theory, there's something here.
That's about it for me. I wish I had more confidence in Sutton since Judy returned. Maybe his target share is lacking because he's still been trying to recover from his injury, since Sutton does have a 28% target share the past 2 games. And that was the argument last week of playing him at 5,100 on DraftKings, is that he's still severely underpriced compared to Judy. So you just take the cheaper teammate. He's only 5,300 this week. But again, who do we have confidence in? That's what I'll try to be sifting throughout the rest of the week.
I mean, none of these guys outside of Javonte Williams look like they're going to make anyone's like cash core anyways. So
yeah, that seems to be the case. If we sold you on how exciting,
and also Javonte Williams as a cash core guy seems pretty flimsy too.
Mm-hmm.
It does. So there's some guys in the mid tier that I think you can make an argument for over, and this stuff is fluid as the week progresses. But if we excited you about the prospect of watching Denver and Chicago, you don't have to watch it on your TV. You watch it in person via Ticketmaster. More memories are made when you're there live for live NFL action. And when you need tickets, Ticketmaster, they got you covered. The official marketplace of the NFL, Ticketmaster, they give you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you 360-degree previews of your section to make sure you have the best view for those pivotal plays, for those Courtland Sutton drop passes, for those Courtland Sutton fumbles. And if your plans happen to change, if you say, wait a second, why do I want to go see Denver, Chicago? Ticketmaster, they give you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, mobile tickets, they make getting in on game day a breeze. And you can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your favorite team colors. At the second right now, we have Bears people trying to change their colors on the Ticketmaster app for sure. Find tickets today. Find your tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/NFL. Okay, some favorite quarterbacks we have that we've not yet discussed that are on the main slate. John, go.
That was some good improv, by the way.
Thank you.
And then also, I actually only have really one other player right now in my quarterback pool. We've talked about a few players. I think Jalen Hurts is interesting. I'm going to wait and see what happens with the market about that game. But we were attacking Philadelphia's secondary prior to them running into Baker Mayfield. And there were some things that went wrong. He turned into old Baker, but like there were some drop first downs along the way. Even Mike Evans had a big drop third down early in the game. But if we think maybe we can get some volume from Sam Howell, and I understand Jalen Carter against Sam Howell, who's taking the league's highest sack rate at quarterback right now. No one else is over 13%. Sam Howell's at 16%. Maybe we don't get the volume that we think we're getting. But it seems like after Cousins and Mac Jones finished as the QB2 in fantasy in weeks 1 and 2 against the Eagles secondary, I wonder if Baker Mayfield just kind of threw everyone off. Again, maybe it doesn't matter for Sam Howell, but if we think we're going to get some push from the Commanders somehow, some way against an Eagles secondary that is a sieve and they are a pass funnel, then maybe I can sneak Jalen Hurts in with AJ Brown. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it right now. Are you on mute?
I am on mute.
Yeah.
Bad job by me.
I was like, oh, you hate the Jalen Hurts call that much. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Hurts is spectacular, obviously. Love him. It's just a matter of salary for sure. Rich, what do you have as far as some of your favorite quarterbacks we've not yet mentioned?
Yeah, I think we walked through most of the guys I really want to play as like core guys between, Allen, Herbert, Tua, and then Russ. I will say, I think Brock Purdy is still tremendously undervalued. Crazy pricing. The Cardinals under Jonathan Gannon have really been a really passive defense. They've blitzed at the 31st highest rate. They played man coverage at the 25th highest rate. They've pressured the opposing quarterback just 27th in the NFL. I mean, the only quarterback that has been better when not pressured than Brock Purdy this season is Tua. He's 44 of 56 when he hasn't been pressured, 9.7 yards per pass attempt. It's just there for him. I just think he's tremendously underpriced. He's now thrown multiple touchdown passes in 8 of his 9 regular season games going back to last year. He just is just a tremendous value still. He just keeps getting there and producing value at the salaries he's at. And I probably will at least make one Burrow team, at least a few Burrow teams actually. We just got listen, the Titans were the elixir for Deshaun Watson. Why the hell can't they be it for Joe Burrow?
Well, he threw the ball like 50 times last night, or was it Monday night, I suppose?
All out of shotgun, too. 98% in the shotgun. They didn't have him turn his back to the defense at all. They're moving. We'll talk about Chase, though. But like that, I mean, I think that he's probably going to throw it 40 plus times in this game for sure.
The thing with Purdy, and obviously you know this too, but like they're 14-point favorites, and how much, it could be the same deal we saw out of Mahomes last week, just kind of chilling.
They score 30 points every game.
Yeah. And shout out to Arizona for people say Arizona's tanking, like they're playing hard and they beat the Cowboys. Shout out to them. And also not shout out, but to the Arizona marketing department, whoever's in charge of making jerseys. Did you happen to see this? You guys happen to see this? They sent out the marketing team, which Josh Dobbs, the scientist, was trying to get his own jersey in the machine that you make your own jersey. Not available. Like the punter's available, the nose guard's available. There's no Josh Dobbs jersey available. And he's playing his butt off this year. He's trying his best. He just got there. What do you want from the guy?
Playing great.
All right. Is that it for? By the way, did we not mention? Did nobody mention Richardson? Are we not?
We did in passing about it. He's still in protocol, so we're just waiting. Obviously, people will play him.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Wednesday night, who knows? But it feels like he's going to play this week, and if we can get 4 quarters out of him against the Rams, I know the defense is playing a little better than we expected. But we expected them to be like.
And his concussion is interesting because remember he self-reported it.
Yeah.
He also this is why Lamar told him to stop taking so much hits, because when that hit came during his rushing touchdown, he's the one that kind of leaned into it rather than trying to avoid it. He's still like recklessly running out there.
But Dean, you got chalk Zach Moss now in that game. You made Zach Moss like, dude. We rank players every week. Got to rank guys on the site, and like running back has obviously died. Eckler's been out. Nick Chubb is gone. We've lost so many guys along the way already. Start the season, and like, dude, Zach Moss is like a legit top 10 running back this week, and he's been the last 2 weeks, and it's like already week 4 of the 2023 season. It's crazy. We're gonna probably get Jonathan Taylor back, but it's 32 touches.
He's lost his leverage. They're winning without him. They don't need Jonathan Taylor. They got Zach Moss running with
32 touches, dude. 32 touches.
So, like, the workhorse back is gone, right? Except for, unless your name is Zach Moss or Kyron Williams.
He's 6K, Dean. He's only 6K.
Yeah, it's
against the Rams. The Rams on a short week. The Rams have been terrible against the run so far to start the year. He's going to get, he's going to get so many carries. Obviously, if Anthony Richardson's back, you have the threat of the running quarterback to steal some of those. But we have Zach Moss as a home favorite against, a team that's allowing 13 rushing points per game to opposing running backs. which is 21st in the league. You brought him up a couple weeks ago, and every guy you flippantly bring up because you brought up Thielen last week. I mean, these guys, they just smashed, Dean. You got the Midas touch.
Yeah. I mean, look, somebody was telling me last week on the Sunday show we do, and so he's like, "Well, Zach Moss is not good." It's like, I don't care that he's not good. He's professionally trained to run the football. He's going to get the ball 25 times. Like, it's all about volume here, right? Like, I don't care if he's not good compared to his contemporaries, right? Like, whatever.
And 2 weeks ago when you called it, he was 4,500, I believe. Like, he was still so cheap. I tried to do that with Kendry Miller. It did not work out the same.
I played some Miller too. I played some Miller and I played some
4,300. I've made dumber decisions.
It's crazy because like the Kendry Miller play, like the people that got to Kendry Miller didn't get to Achane. It's like it was like the same argument though, kind of, except for you had Mostert still there ahead, but it was kind of similar.
At least we had reporting on Kendry, like possibly being the hot hand. We had nothing. We had the ghost of Achane.
That's what I'm mad about. Like, how are we in the year 2023 and like not one Dolphins beat like even clued us in on like that being potentially like part of the outcome?
One dude had the almanac. He played Mostert and Achane in the same lineup, which is just insane. I saw that lineup out there, and that was
came from the future. Just came back in time. My son hit me with the first time deeds. My son's 18, and he can play DFS for the first time. Yeah. And he told me, he said, "Dad, if I could just go back 7 hours, I would have won everything."
That easy.
You gotta summon your inner Biff Tannen. How is he enjoying his first time playing DFS? I assume it's his first time playing.
He's having a blast, man. He's having a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he's having a good time, I'm sure. Okay, other running backs. Hey, Kamara's coming back. How much do we care about that? You mentioned Miller. He's not cheap. I guess he's kind of like middle of the road, 6K or so. Are they just going to let him go or not necessarily?
I mean, everything kind of ran out in his favor so far, right? Like these 3 weeks. I mean, Jamal Williams gets hurt. None of the other guys have been good. Now, you've got Jameis starting. Like, it's kind of all worked out in his favor to where they kind of need him. So I don't really have any pushback. It's kind of a wild card. There was a lot of, obviously he was part of best shape of his life season this offseason. Everyone's talking about how explosive he looked and how different it was. He was as a player the past 2 years. I've certainly played worse running backs than Alvin Kamara, coming off this 3-game absence.
John, if you got anything on that, by all means, feel free to touch on it. Madison, I guess, gets one more shot, or we think Akers comes in. What's the story here with Madison and Akers, or we just cross it out and ignore it?
For Kamara, it's interesting because Jameis Winston hasn't really been that kind of wing it out quarterback under Dennis Allen. Even last year, when these two teams played in week 2, they blitzed Jameis Winston on 40% of his dropbacks, and that's what their defense they're playing this year is. They're blitzing at the league's 3rd highest rate, so you would think they do that again. And Winston only averaged 3.9 yards per attempt. He basically did not throw it deep at all. He was just trying to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible, which in theory would help out Kamara. And Kamara is off back-to-back seasons, handling 77% of the Saints' backfield touches. So if we get that kind of usage, no Jamal Williams, sure, I could see it at 6,100 on DraftKings, especially when we get the points per reception. And then for Madison, I think Cam Akers does sound like he's going to be active. And if that's the case, you would worry because we kind of saw Alexander Madison had the red carpet rolled out for him last week, and yet it didn't matter. Like, to not score a touchdown now, to handle 100% of the team's carries inside the 5-yard line and still not score a touchdown. He's basically Najee Harris in the better offense right now. So I would imagine we see Akers.
But enough to play him, or just enough to ignore them both?
I would think enough to cannibalize both of them, at least in their first game together, unless one of them, Akers included, breaks out. But I don't think we can bet on that against the Panthers. The Vikings have just been moving the ball through the air. And for Kirk Cousins, someone who regressed basically 3 years in a row in Minnesota, he actually has been playing significantly better through these first 3 games.
Well, you mentioned the Jameis thing. I miss Jameis Unleashed, where you can roster Jameis and the defense he plays against. Like, that was optimal. That was amazing.
I mean, the 30-30 season will be remembered forever for me. I will never forget that season. It was the magical time to be alive, where you could stack the quarterback with double stacks and play the defense coming back.
Amazing.
Just an incredible time to be alive. Something I'm going to tell my family about.
And the
forever.
fact he ended that season with a walk-off pick six in overtime was the chef's kiss. It's like you could not have planned that, scripted it any better.
And he had LASIK since then, right? And now they reel him in and they don't let him do his thing. But he was so much fun. And was it really 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions? Is that correct? Is that the confirmed number? Is that okay?
Perfect.
I don't remember it was that many interceptions. I knew it was a lot of interceptions. I didn't know it was that many. That's a lot. All right. Anything else as far as running back we should point out, or shall we talk about receiver? Rich, feel free to mention our running back you want. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you touched on Miles Sanders a little bit. I think it is a good spot if you're trying to get off the Panthers wide receivers. Again, we'll see which quarterback we get. If we get Dalton, I think both Thielen and Shark could be really fun in this game. But if you want to pivot, Miles Sanders, although he's not doing anything with it, he is getting the opportunity. He's still getting 17.5 touches, 6.5 targets per game. They're using him out wide as well. So the targets are there. Jerome Ford, I think, had promising usage last week. He played 60% of their snaps in the first half. It was very clearly a game plan to, unlike the first two offenses the Titans played, the Browns did not want to run it into the teeth of that front seven. But even then, I mentioned 60% of the snaps. Jerome Ford also ran 13 routes to Kareem Hunt's and Pierre Strong's combined 2 in the first half. He was their clear player. Whenever he scored his receiving touchdown, that was a double move because he played wide receiver in high school. Like, he has the receiving chops. And so if we think we're going to revert back into both the receiving back and using him in the running game as their majority running back, I think 5,400, he's cheap on both sides, is enough to where we should consider him as an every touch player. And if you want to get like kind of cute, Elijah Mitchell is pretty cheap. You need the touchdown. But if we're trying to fit all these guys, Elijah Mitchell, as they promised, was used in the first half. He had 7 touches in the first half, 2 in the first quarter behind Christian McCaffrey. If you think it's a blowout, maybe you can get there.
Yeah, you kind of sort of need that blowout. The last time I think they blow the game out too much, even he was pulled off the field. It was the guy with the initials.
Jordan Mason.
Maybe I was thinking of somebody else. Who's the guy with the 3 letters in San Fran that was like a
Tyrion Davis-Price.
Is he a thing? Is he still a person?
No. I mean, he is a person, so yes, that's confirmed. But...
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The one that we should be concerned with fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's like you said as well, the Cardinals have been frisky. They've covered in all 3 games. So maybe even against this Niners team, they just don't go away.
Receivers. John, you go first as far as some of your favorite receivers we've not yet touched on.
We talked about the Panthers if you want to get there, and I do like Chark quite a bit in this game. Led the teams in routes run without Jonathan Domingo, who suffered a concussion last week. And the Vikings are the only defense allowing over 121 receiving yards from the boundary, and they're allowing 171 per game. Shark also tied for the league high mark in targets 20 yards deep. Again, that's from Dalton. We need Dalton. We don't want Bryce Young, who was 31st in yards per attempt from a clean pocket under center in this game. That just makes it significantly less fun for both sides because I think we get fireworks with Dalton. And then we could keep on testing the Colts secondary against receivers. Puka Nacua, I know it seemed like a letdown for everyone, but still to finish second on that team in targets with 7. Whenever 70 receiving yards is your letdown game and everyone's pissed off at you, that means you've been doing something amazing. You could argue at 6,700 on DraftKings, he should be mid 7Ks instead. So I'll go right back to Puka. And then we've seen Michael Pittman now, although we think we're getting Anthony Richardson. I think it's fine anyways. But if it is Gardner Minshew, since Minshew came off the bench in week 2, Pittman has soaked up 31% of the team's targets. He's getting heavily targeted by Gardner Minshew. So there's a little skinny stack.
Was that in contention, by the way, as the games you're going to feature? Was that like the 4th or 5th game, the Rams versus the Colts? Were you thinking about it?
It's interesting, but I wanted confirmation about Anthony Richardson. And given Stafford that he doesn't add a rushing floor, and he's still like right around Russ's price, I thought that was more interesting to talk about.
I think more people are going to get the Stafford too early in the week than Ross.
That makes it hot.
Yeah. I think that it's going to get there for sure. I mean, the Colts are one of these teams you're going to look at for weekly overs for sure. The Puka stuff is interesting because the Bengals played man coverage on 38% of the snaps on Monday night. It was the highest rate of man coverage the Rams have seen. Puka had 0 targets against man coverage. He was still targeted on 33% of his routes when the Bengals went to zone. So far this season, he's been targeted on 39.6% of his routes against zone coverage, is 18.8% against man coverage. You guys doing math at home? That is more than half. Nobody plays. The Colts play second most zone coverage in the NFL. They don't really play any man because they don't have the horses. Literally, pun intended on that one. They just don't have any viable secondary pieces right now. So like they just sit back. They play a lot of shell coverage. So I do think Puka bounces back. You've got your natural skinny with Dean's guy, Zach Moss. Still probably underpriced at 6,700. I think that's the way to kind of attack that game. Feels like Chris Olave still weekly flies under the radar for DFS. He hasn't had like a monster game, but he's literally getting there. He's got double-digit targets in every game this season. He just had 4 games as a rookie with double-digit targets. We've seen Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, and AJ Brown all go over 100 yards against the Bucs. He feels like a guy that gets overlooked. He's priced in kind of like a nebulous zone where people either pay up or they go down to the next tier. I think Thielen and Shark are interesting if we get Dalton, especially because like Thielen, it's for both ways. Like Daigle said, like the Vikings have allowed the most touchdowns on throws 20 yards or further downfield to wide receivers. Also, they blitz at the league's highest rate, and Adam Thielen has a 28% team target share against the blitz. So it's like both guys could get there if we get Dalton. And then, the Bengals guys like got to be in play, especially on a slate where probably, Tyreek gets a lot of ownership. He's in the game of the week again, or one of the games of the week. The Bengals, like I said, they went this huge shotgun approach with Burrow because he can't move. They've also now used that as a pivot, and they've moved the primary target, Jamar Chase, inside. He's now been in the slot for 32% of his snaps after rates of 20% and 14% in his first 2 years in the NFL. He already has 13 slot receptions. He had just 25 and 16 over his first 2 seasons in the NFL. It's hurt his depth of target, but we have potential for a lot more volume. And then the Titans are just getting absolutely crushed by every wide receiver. Pick a wide receiver, play a wide receiver against the Titans. If it's a situation too where Chase against the Titans is not going to be as heavily rostered as he should. We gotta go to it.
I have Chase in my pool as well because they've shown this is a 3rd year in a row now where they have shown that's the one player they will move around and concertedly give him targets. As a rookie, whenever he was beating everyone deep and defenses started bracketing him, they just moved him closer to the line of scrimmage and lowered his ADOT and said, we'll get you targets that way. Last year, whenever he came back from injury and T. Higgins was still hobbled afterwards, that's when they started pounding Jamar Chase for 13.5 targets per game. Like they will always find ways to feed him. And so now if Joe Burrow is just limping around, it doesn't matter. We saw that on Monday night. They still just drag Jamar Chase in and say, okay, get your targets this way and do what you do. So Chase certainly, should be in everyone's pool.
Yeah, because they can't run the ball against anybody, and let alone the Titans.
You don't have to, but ideally, you want to run it back. Is there a run back on Tennessee we feel like mildly comfortable with? A Kunkwu. Burks is really, really cheap. Is Burks not happening? What's the deal with Burks? Why is he not?
Have you watched the Titans play, Dean, this year?
No, I'm trying
outside of playing the Chargers.
They're not in the red zone very often.
They aren't in the red zone. They're not in the red zone.
I've seen their defense. It's not good.
And Burks' target share increased for these last 2 games because DeAndre Hopkins just isn't practicing and still hobbled by his ankle injury, but no one's getting there. You can't play Hopkins on his 24% target share. Chico Conco has been dropped in some of these $2,000 high stakes fantasy leagues I'm in, and no one's racing to pick him up because you can't play him. So what does it matter?
Okay. So just, you don't obviously you don't have to run it back, and you could.
The more we all run the Sims and try to get smarter, except for me who didn't play Chargers Vikings, the more we realize that we're just stacking good offenses and you don't need the run back unless it's also a good option. For the Titans, it's not a good option.
No, I do think the meta has changed a little bit in recent years where a lot of people just try to get a game right for their fantasy lineup instead of, building out what maybe necessarily be a really good solid roster. They're just literally trying to get the game right, and if the game goes nuclear, you win money.
Yeah, I mean the thought process is, get one thing right as opposed to getting 8 things right. What's easy? Hit one sider total as opposed to like an 18 parlay. What's easier to do, right? So I get it. All right, let's talk about tight ends. Speaking of getting things right, we're going to get most of these wrong because they're all tight ends. There's no correct answers.
We are in an all-time bad tight end run out, but we're only 3 weeks in. But holy shit, this position, like, kill this position with fire.
There's no Kelsey this week, so not on the main slates. Hawkinson, Andrews, Goddard, Higbee, Freiermuth, Kittle. Are we excited? John, you want to chime in here as far as some tight ends?
I mean, I don't want to. Just the fact that we already were talking about, like, Dawson Knox is a significantly better play over Dalton Kincaid because of how they're being used. The Kincaid syndrome has kind of trickled down to everyone. Dallas Goedert's being sucked in shallow to the line of scrimmage. T.J. Hawkinson's getting there on receptions, but still has a 4.5 ADOT because he also is just seeing 80% of his targets within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. They're not sending him out deep. And why would you whenever you have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson? You don't want T.J. Hawkinson running those deep routes. And that's just kind of happening with every single tight end. I don't know who's popping over in the models there, but I'm sure like Freiermuth, 3,400. Probably rings a bell if you want to play with Kenny Pickett or just try to even pivot off of Najee Harris for tournaments. Yeah, man, it's ugly.
You want to know? I'll tell you who's hitting the most optimals on both FanDuel and DK. And as always, grain of salt Wednesday night. FanDuel 31%, Dalton Schultz.
God no.
28%, 26% Higbee. 16% Freiermuth.
What is Dalton Schultz projecting for that? Like he's getting like ownership.
Okay.
He has like 50 receiving yards this year.
He's 4.6. Understand, like 4.6 is really useful.
Yeah, 4.5 in.
Yeah, so he's projecting for 6.9 points. So that's not great, but it's what he gets you.
Can he get 6.9 on FanDuel? There's no way, right?
He doesn't even have 6.9 this year, does he? He's got
a 9-yard touchdown. And he's there.
He has 5 catches for 47 yards through 3 games. So that is 7.5 FanDuel points through 3 games.
He's 4th on the team in target share the past 2 weeks without Noah Brown because they've just put Tank Dell in there instead, and they're like, oh, we don't have to give Schultz these targets anymore.
So he's projecting for literally 90% of his season-long points.
Maybe Dean, this should be the new.
We're just picking. It's fine.
I think this should be the new bit, Dean, is us just poking holes in every tight end, not picking.
Yes, instead of trying to build them up.
Then you'll be correct most of the time. Just don't play any. I mean, of course, DK FanDuel, they will not take your submission because you have to actually give a tight end. And 6.9 is not a good projection, but it's not what Schultz does. It's what he allows you to get. And basically the model is saying tight end stinks and just
don't play any, just literally take a 0 is what they're telling you. Take a 0 at tight end.
Because you're probably going to be wrong anyway.
Dave and Njoku, like we lost him. Like he's not getting targets. Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper are forming their own little pad with 51% of the team's targets. So like David Njoku's at an 11% target share. He hasn't seen 5 targets in any game yet this year. So we can't pay down for him. It's ugly, man.
John, you mentioned Freiermuth, and he's getting the most on DK right now. 39% of the optimals I made, and 22% going to Goddard. Goddard feels like he has not been very involved, just kind of watching the games. But he's
going back to last year too for him too. I mean, Andrews, even DK, it's like begging you to play him. They made him 5.4.
Is Flowers hurting him?
I mean, he came back from injury. He scored a touchdown his first game back, and then just last week, it's like we just have very limited sample. It's a new offense too for him as well. So I mean, I think it's just small sample stuff with him. I still think he's going to have a really high target share as the course goes on because it looks like Bateman's never happening. He's hurt again. Odell's hurt. Yeah. I got a couple bad ones. I mean, I got one real bad one.
Give me the worst one. What do you got?
Yeah, maybe if you're making Daigle stack earlier, it's Logan Thomas. He's been targeted on 22% of his routes before he had the concussion. He actually caught a touchdown on the concussion, was well on his way that game. We have targeted the middle of the field against the Eagles. They did get Reed Blankenship back last week, but obviously they lost Nakobe Dean. They lost Devontae Maddox. Like their middle of the field defense is kind of the area we want to target them. They did get James Bradbury last week back. So if we are going to get like this huge run out, I can kind of like stretch it. They've allowed 8.5 yards per target to tight ends and 82% catch rate to position. He's the one. I think people will still get to Jake Ferguson. He's not running a lot of routes, but his quality of life is very good. And only Travis Kelce has been targeted at a higher rate per route run than Jake Ferguson, and it's all red zone targets. He's got 8 red zone targets. He's got a 35% team target share in the red zone, which is second among all tight ends. And like, if we're just trying to luck box into a touchdown, like he fits the profile.
Were you doing a bit there with Kelce and Ferguson because they're both have famous girlfriends now, or women they're tied to? Or
does he have a famous girlfriend?
Who is Jake Ferguson dating?
Yeah, I just saw it drop today. One of the Cavender twins that played for the Miami Heat, the women's basketball team.
Good for him.
Yeah. I thought that's what you were doing. It just sort of worked out that way because you mentioned Kelce.
I did not know that. That was news.
You said it's quality of life. I'm like, that's what I thought you were referencing.
Well, I meant his target quality, but also good for him.
His quality of life's improved as well. It's like Micah said.
Debo doesn't play too, then because Kittle literally anytime one of those guys misses a game, Debo or Ayuk, he's good. And when they're both on the field, he has 30 yards. And we saw it again last week. So if like Debo seems like legitimately kind of banged up early in the week, it'll be curious to see if he gets like a load management game this week. But if there's no Debo, then he gets interesting. Because the Cardinals are on the flow chart again. They've allowed a tight end 1 score all 3 games. They're back in our hearts.
I can't believe the flow chart is still like a real thing like 10 years later.
Just for the Cardinals.
For the Cardinals. Everything else has changed, but the flow chart, it's still real. John, you got a final word as far as tight ends before we move on and talk about our nonsense? We gave the people 120 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes of hard-hitting analysis for week 4. We're going to talk a little bit of movies before we step aside and get out of here. We certainly encourage you guys to stay with us. But, if you want to leave, by all means, understood. But, go ahead.
120 minutes of 2 games we're confident in and 3 games whose quarterbacks we may be scared of. Yes.
Oh, Broncos, baby. I cannot wait for this game.
I may, in Russ lineups, I may play Troutman. He's just right down there.
What?
He's running the routes.
He's not getting
the targets. I may play Troutman because it's so bad. Don't even care anymore. Just fill the tight end spot.
By the way, Troutman's 4-3 on Fanduel.
Just do Julian Hill. He's got to be 2,500 on Draftkings, right?
Julian is 2,500. Troutman's 2,800.
If you're playing Fanduel, Troutman is 4-3. We talked about how useful those.
I may play Troutman.
My God!
He's out there now. Yes, he's turned his 3 targets on 78% of routes the last 2 weeks into 0 catches and 0 yards. That's never good. But he's cheap and he's out there with Russ against the Bears. I may play him.
All right, let's bring in producer Steve. Producer Steve won our 100-man, and again, if you want to participate this week going forward, do check out the pinned comment on YouTube. Also, if for some reason you didn't hear it before and you're hearing it now, and that will be weird because you probably heard the entire podcast, but why would you hear just this? But if you somehow missed it earlier, Cookie Monster Rules. Cookie Monster Rules, you won the initial contest last week. Make a comment there on YouTube or find me on Twitter at DFS_Almanac. We want to get you that month free of RG Premium. Producer Steve coming in. You had recommended that we watched Space Jam. We all watched Space Jam for the very first time. It wasn't your first time though, right, Steve?
No, not my first time. I really picked it because I knew it was a movie you hadn't seen yet, and you've seen everything.
Yeah, it was a hole in my game for whatever reason. I never really saw it, and I felt like I was too old to see it for the first time. But yeah, I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad you recommended it. I'm glad you checked that box for me. We were talking about it a little bit pre-show as well. I know Rich had some deep thoughts as far as Space Jam as well. But Rich, this wasn't your first time, right? You saw Space Jam many years ago?
No, I mean this movie came out when I was 14. Like this was like the strike zone. And I want to talk about the stuff around this movie at that time, first of all, because obviously the soundtrack was huge, but this brought back, like, remember the Looney Tunes were on like all the gear, like at that, like in that, like the mid 90s, like the team shirts, remember like the big baggy shirts where it like had them, you'd get like whatever team it was. They just swap in the logos on them and you have the front and the back shirts, like, because the Looney Tunes, when I was a kid, they were on, and obviously we watched the reruns, but they disappeared for like a 10-year gap. And they were just like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bring Michael Jordan's comeback, and we're going to tie that back with the Looney Tunes. So we're going to put this together. And because this movie made so much off merchandising, I think it literally made over $1 billion on merchandising. It's like one of the few movies. So it was just like that phenomenon between the soundtrack and the merchandise, even before we get to the movie, it had such a big culture impact that I'm sure did not touch you, Dean, at the time.
No, I mean, yeah, watching it now, like, and you see, like, they mentioned Nike and they mentioned Gatorade, and everything is sort of tied in. Obviously, I had a couple questions. I'm going to reserve them. I want to see what John has to say first, as far as his take for Space Jam. I have a couple questions regarding casting. I'm confused, but John, what do you got as far as Space Jam?
I looked it up afterwards, and I didn't realize it grossed because I was so curious about how it did in theaters. Because I could see it going either direction, since I don't recall it coming out like Rich did, and it grossed over 250 million worldwide in theaters. Like, that's incredible.
In the 90s, the mid 90s. So like,
it's incredible. To me, Dean, again, this goes back to you. Like, your opinion is most important because you haven't seen it. But I do remember every road trip, because my parents are, and this is why it trickles down to me as a nomad too. My parents were big road trip people. We even drove from Dallas, Texas one summer to Niagara Falls, down to Disney World, and back over. Like, we were those kind of family during the summer.
Oh, nice.
And I remember there was a summer where, dude, I'm not kidding, for 14 hours in a car, probably 13 hours, I listened to the Space Jam soundtrack. It was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. Like, that was my introduction to hip hop, was the Space Jam soundtrack. It was the coolest thing I'd ever heard as a child, just everywhere in my CD player. So that was
Kelly. I Believe I Can Fly is the first one I can think of. Well, what else? Yeah. What else was on there? What else was on the soundtrack? I have not, like, that I can, call up in my head for some reason. But what was your go-to?
Even the credit title, the "Welcome to the Space Jam," like that theme song.
Yeah,
it opens the album, and that's like it's like, holy shit! Like, this is what we have going for us. Like, let's get this thing going now. It's amazing.
So, first, one of my questions was, this came out in 1996. How was Shaq not involved? How did nobody call Shaq? Shaq is like a human.
Call Sean Bradley,
right? Yeah. Well, I have so many issues.
And it wasn't even Sean Bradley at first. It was George Murasan was cast.
What?
And, like, George Murasan was supposed to be Sean Bradley, and he had to go home to I forget what country George Murasan.
Romanian. He was Romanian.
He had to go back to Romania for something. Like, something happened. Like, something was happening in that country that he had to go back for, and he could not do the filming.
So they basically needed a 7'6", 7'7" guy. Essentially, and Manu Bull wasn't available, and then, all right, I guess we'll call Sean Bradley. Yeah, but I was thinking, like, how is Shaq not involved in this? Like, he made Blue Chips in 1994, and then I was thinking, no way, he made Kazam in 1996. Did Shaq possibly say no to Space Jam to make Kazam? Like, is that something that might have happened? I don't know.
That's the only thing he's said no to in his life, if so. Otherwise, he cashes that paycheck.
Yeah, the General. Like, stop endorsing the General. They're robbing people.
Shaq had such a unique. People forget, like, acting Shaq when he was, like, actually, like, the lead and stuff, and then he rapper Shaq. There, like, he's worn many hats.
I remember one time I saw a video floating around on Twitter of him being in a Japanese game show where he was driving a go-kart around. And I was like, this is awesome, but it's also not shocking at all because it's Shaq.
So I met Shaq, and he literally was so big that I actually felt sorry for him. Like, he was so much bigger in person than you even think, 'cause he's huge. But I actually, like, when he was so big that I actually thought, like, this dude's life it's like just not normal. Like,
yeah,
he can't do anything normal when you're that big.
He seems to embrace it, though. He does an incredible job.
He's massive, though.
Now he's DJ Diesel.
Yeah, he's DJ Diesel. He's living a great life. His quality of life also strong.
Yes.
You mentioned Sean Bradley, and I was thinking, like, what is the window of, like, let's call Sean Bradley? Because this guy, I know he stuck around the NBA for like 12 years or so, but there was a window of, like, oh, this guy is super, super interesting. And then, like, oh, wait, this guy is terrible at basketball. And that was, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months. And it was somewhere in those 3 or 4 months, they say, oh, let's call Sean Bradley. Like you said, I guess George Murasan when Murasan's ahead of you in the pecking order, by the way, that's not a good sign, because Murasan, wasn't a spectacular basketball player. Also, the makeup of the Monstars. This bothered me. Okay, they got a point guard in Muggsy Bogues. I get it, right? You got a center in Sean Bradley. 2 centers, Patrick Ewing. You got 2 more bigs, Barkley and Larry Johnson. There's no wings. There's no 2s. There's no 3s. You want to know why the Monstars lost? And there's no wings. There's no 3-point shooting. It's the construction of the team. I don't know who constructed this team. They did a poor job, is all I'm saying.
Ewing was more of a 4. Like he was a floatable 4 or 5.
Ewing was a 5. Oakley was the 4.
He was kind of a power forward, though. He could sub in it like that.
So yeah.
What are your opinions though of the movie beyond the structure of their lineup?
I just want to complain about that. I thought it was fine. Like I thought it was perfectly fine. If I was 10 years old and I was watching it the first time, I would have loved it. I would have loved it. I'm not going to sit here and hate on it. It was perfect. There was a fun little Pulp Fiction, like a 5-second Pulp Fiction montage or homage with Yosemite Sam, which I appreciated. The little John Travolta, Sam Jackson. They had the music playing as well. I'm not sure if that made the soundtrack. You would confirm that, John. But it was a nice little moment during the game. Bill Murray. I got Bill Murray. I got Danny DeVito, which I appreciated. Little Wayne Knight. So
a lot of Wayne Knight.
Wayne Knight was popping. I think Wayne Knight was third on the call sheet, the billing on that movie. He was popping at the time. That was right off, Jurassic Park, and he was on 2 sitcoms at that time. Wayne Knight was living his best life.
Seinfeld and what was his second sitcom he was on?
Was he on Third Rock from the Sun, or he was on one other? He was on something else big.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure we had like a spinoff after Seinfeld or whatever. It just didn't work like all the other spinoffs. But yeah, he was living his best life. He got eaten on Jurassic. Which, by the way, side note, I watched Jurassic Park for the first time about a year ago or so too.
Yeah, that's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
I think it holds up. I still think this movie is a lot of fun. And maybe I rebranded it for my brain because I also what I did last night, guys, this was my fun Tuesday night, was after I watched Space Jam, I was like, oh, maybe I need to watch the new Space Jam just to make sure. And I rewatched LeBron Space Jam, and you want to talk about opposite spectrums of movies. I mean, the LeBron one is the biggest piece of garbage you have ever seen. Nothing makes sense. It's all advertising. Even the game of basketball and the Monstars aren't fun whatsoever. But I think the Monstars and like the Michael Jordan Space Jam is a lot of fun.
Can I just say, like, nostalgia is undefeated. And like in an alternate universe, what if you watch the LeBron one first and watch the Jordan one second? I'm not here to defend it. I've not seen the LeBron one. It's probably not great. I don't know.
Even the chat's agreeing, saying yes, the new Space Jam is just brutal. It is.
But it's because of nostalgia. You're subconsciously like you can't like it as much. Like, well, how many sequels, how many remakes do you like more than the original? Did you watch the remake, The White Man Can't Jump? If you did, I bet you didn't like it.
No, I can't.
So not as much the original.
I mean, this movie doesn't hold up for me as well as it did. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that came out in the 90s doesn't. Well, it's also like this movie is shot by a person that didn't make movies. It's literally a guy who made all Michael Jordan's commercials.
Hell yeah.
And that's why it looks the way it does, especially early on, like the first half. And then you think about too, like Michael Jordan is like legitimately good in like the first like half hour of this movie, but then when he has to do like acting with just like I don't even know how they did it, like how they filmed everything with the with the cartoons because it was the mid 90s and not now.
It's like Roger Rabbit.
But it definitely like his acting gets significantly worse as it goes on. It's not really his fault. I mean, Jordan was so big, but the movie is literally about nothing. Like there's nothing about there's no message for this movie at all. It's literally like we're trying to bring the Looney Tunes back and Michael Jordan's coming back. Let's like just market this to make a bunch of money.
Who was the best?
Also, the Lola Bunny stuff is not good. It's very 90s. All of her stuff. It's
yes, they
very 90s. Very 90s.
They did clean her up in the new one. They made it more appropriate.
So, who was the best actor athlete? I would say Muggsy. Muggsy made me laugh. I enjoyed.
Muggsy. Bird. Larry Bird's by far the best dude in this movie. That's a non-actor.
I thought Barkley was fine. I thought Barkley was good.
Yeah, it was cool seeing those old scenes too. Like, and I love them like acting when they got zapped with the old switcheroo of the superpowers. Yeah. I enjoyed that part. Like Ewing at the free throw line was pretty fun. But
Ewing had some good bits.
Yes. I'm glad I watched it. So I'm glad Steve recommended it. Let's go ahead and knock out this week's recommendation. I've not run anything by you guys this week, which I probably should have. I had a few that I was thinking about, but this one's no longer streaming anywhere, so I'm going to throw that out. I can always go back to The Drop, which I almost gave you guys last week, The Drop starring Tom Hardy and James Gandolfini. I know John Daigle is a big fan of crime. It is a crime movie, but this is what I'm leaning. I'm leaning, you guys probably never seen this before. Has anybody seen American Animals by chance? It's a movie that plays on Amazon Prime. It might be an Amazon Prime original. It's based on a true story. It's a heist movie. Who doesn't love a heist movie? What are they trying to steal? A book. That sounds like a lot of fun, right? I'm telling you, it's awesome. Have you seen it before, John? I see you nodding your head.
No, but heist and crime, I love.
It is based on a true story, and I don't want to give anything away as far as how it's told, but it's really, really clever how it's based upon a true story and just how it's told. And I'm telling you, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Like they're essentially stealing a book out of a school library. I think it was in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. It's highly ranked on the old Rotten Tomatoes. Rich, have you seen American Animals on Amazon Prime?
I've not. Seems like that's how we're going because you built up a sales pitch for it.
Well, that's the pitch. I mean, I had a couple more. I know John was a big fan of a former Paul Giamatti movie, Sideways. I wonder if you've seen American Splendor, because that Harvey Picar role was spectacular. I enjoy me some Paul Giamatti, but I'm not sure. Have you seen that before, John? Have you seen American Splendor by chance?
I haven't, but honestly, I get excited whenever I'm in last place and you win because your movies hit all the right notes for me. I enjoy going down, like me and books and music. It's hard. I have to actually put in work to find new things. I wish I had a Dean app. It's like, what movie does Dean recommend for me? Because I always end up enjoying it.
I don't want to be too niche, but yeah, I want to have it like a broad appeal. And I think American Animals, while it doesn't sound like a fun movie, I promise you, it's a fun movie. It's a suspenseful movie. It's a heist movie, and I think you guys will enjoy it. I was going to go with The Outfit. Has anybody seen The Outfit? It was playing on Amazon Prime, but it's no longer available. But it just came out last year, and it's a mystery thriller and British, but like it's excellent. It was one of my favorite movies the last couple of years, and if it comes back around where it's available somewhere, I'll probably recycle that one. But I guess it's American Animals. That's what we're going with.
Yep.
American Animals on Amazon Prime. I assume most people have that. Watch along with us. Let us know what you think of it in the comment section going forward. Let us know what movie we should recommend next in the comment section too, because I'm always willing to take recommendations. With that said, that is week 4. Week 4 is in the books. Rich, tell the people. I mean, by now, obviously they know, but if they don't, there's one person that doesn't. Where can they find your stuff?
Yeah, sharpfootballanalysis.com. This week, as you people listen to this probably on Thursday, however many points are scored in the Thursday night game, we do this promo every year, will be the percentage off everything at the site. So if there's 100 points scored tomorrow, it'll use points 100, and that's literally you get everything for free. But I don't think we'll get 100 points. But obviously, the first year we did it, there were like 54 points or something scored, and it was a good time.
Sharp, I'm sure, loved it.
And it was. You know what it was? It was the first year he opened the site, and it was Jets, Broncos. Trevor Siemian was starting, and if you remember this game, Sam Darnold had like a 60-yard touchdown run. It was like the most insane run. Like it's like Sam Darnold had this play, and like it just this game just popped. It got real weird. Melvin Gordon had like a long touchdown run. There was like a bunch of stuff going on, and yeah, he was like excited for how like the first half went, and like he wanted the promo to be something. You don't want to just be like a 10-3 game and do nothing.
Sure.
But then it started to like rack up points, and he was like, oh, like they might want to stop scoring.
You want about like 40 points. That's like the optimal number, right? John, tell the people where they can find you.
J Daigle on Twitter. And then, of course, if you're in the redraft streets, you can still use the promo code Daigle for 25% off. It's not too late because it's a long season. We're just in week 4. My waiver column's up. I just got some notifications. I'm getting text because people found out in the high stakes leagues that I was going 35 to 40% on Josh Palmer. And now they closed, and I'm seeing that we have some like 511, 559 bids for Josh Palmer if you still have waivers out there, because Quentin Johnston was drafted everywhere. So yeah, waiver column still out there. And then also, before we get out of here, because it's already hour 40, who cares anymore? Something else I saw this week, if someone's going to theaters, a friend invited me to go to my first Bali movie, and it's called Jawan. Dean, are you aware of Jawan?
No. I'm not aware of Juwan.
It is a Bali movie. It is obviously involves dancing and music to go along with action. It's 3 hours long. There's intermission to go along with this dancing and confetti and everything. And it genuinely, if you ask me to describe it, because the actor, I can't remember the actor's name, but as my friend told me, quote, Indian Arnold Schwarzenegger, it starts out with a heist, but then there's also a marriage, a car fighting scene in there. There's costumes. It was the wildest thing I have ever watched in my lifetime. So if any of that interests you, to sit down for Bali John Wick meets Fast and the Furious, it's called Juwan. It's in theaters now.
Yeah. Have you watched RRR?
That's
No,
what
I
was thinking
haven't.
of the whole
Is it
time
same
he was
actor?
talking about it.
That's a good question.
No.
That's
my
also
first
3 hours, and I'm told it's like nonstop action. And I've
Yeah,
not
it's
seen
amazing.
It's in my queue.
Okay, well,
You
that's what
recommend that?
that's what Juwan was. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna watch that then.
Yeah, it's like 3 hours, just so you know. RR is also like 3 hours, I believe. So carve out some time for American Animals, for RRR. Do appreciate y'all sticking with us. This is Rich Hribar. It's John Daigle, producer Steve, RotoGrinders. I was Dean. Join the Listener League. It's going to be at the pinned comment over there on the YouTube. Crush week 4. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button. We're out of here. Holler!